Hi everyone, I hope you're doing great. I'm doing fantastic myself. This is The Wife of Caesar, courtesy of Streiner, Anticorruption Bureau. This program is Streiner's attempt to talk about corruption in a clear, simple way so that we all have better tools to fight it with a little more than good intentions. My name is Michel Levien, and I'm happy to be here with you doing this. So let's move on to news and current events. In this section, we talk about relevant news that might be clearly related to corruption, in which case our job is to explain why they are relevant. And if they are not exactly clear, we will explain the nexus between the news and corruption and try to, again, explain why they are relevant. Well, this month's biggest news, I guess, in the world of corruption is TI, that is Transparency International's release of its annual, let me see if I get this right, Corruption Perception Index. Yeah, the Corruption Perception Index, for those of you who don't know, is a way that the best way that we currently have to measure how corrupt a country is. It doesn't measure how corrupt it is, but how corrupt its citizens perceive it to be. And it's released every year, and we should pay attention to it because it'll tell you how the world is evolving concerning corruption. Other than that, we're going to talk about another piece of news, again, concerning Pemex. And it's not only because it's the biggest item of news here in Mexico for this month, but because this is very relevant for our purposes. Now, the news this time concerns the purchase by the federal government of several gasoline trucks, gasoline carrying trucks, I guess, to substitute the use of the gasoline pipelines. Now, the issue here is the federal government spent about $92 million US dollars to purchase close to 700 trucks. This ordinarily would not be a problem, except in a press conference, a journalist asked the president himself why the government did not hold a tender or sometimes called a contest, but rather it went with something called direct allocation, which is when the government decides chooses the vendor directly without holding a contest. This isn't illegal. There's actually a law that provides for specific situations in which the government can do this. But when he was asked, the president responded, well, we have a clear conscience, we are not corrupt, and this is why this wasn't wrong. Now, the problem with this is that not only is it a bit, let's say, questionable at best, but the government or the president himself is violating a key principle in the fight against corruption, which is this notion of the appearance of impropriety. The appearance of impropriety is essentially a fancy way of saying, let's not do things that are good, but seem to be bad. And when the government is saying that we have a clear conscience and we are not corrupt and this is why we can do this, instead of citing the actual statute that allows them to do it, he is generating the appearance of impropriety. And the problem with that is that any diligent attorney or any diligent state attorney or attorney general will have to look into this and waste valuable resources into something that is not exactly improper. This is why that is relevant. Okay, so let's move on to our case section. Here we discuss something that may or may not be related to our previous section, to the news, but relevant cases that serve to illustrate the importance of the fight against corruption. In this case, we will talk about the golden passports and the case of Roger Stone. For those of you who don't know, golden passports are passports or visas that governments issue to people in exchange for them making direct investment in their country. Now, this might seem usual, but the problem with that is that some passports grant more rights than others. In this particular case, passports to countries that are members of the European Union grant their residents and citizens the same rights as any European citizen. Now, this is relevant because the European Commission has asked its member countries to enforce higher controls over how the criteria that they use to issue passports. Countries like Malta, Cyprus, and Bulgaria currently give citizenship, that is direct citizenship without wait, for those people who make an investment of €1 million or more. This is a problem because golden passports are very, very commonly used to launder money, to bring money from corrupt proceeds of crime into the European market. And in the worst cases, they serve as a get-out-of-jail-free card for dictators and despots. A good example of this is an aunt of Bashar al-Assad who escaped Syria and I think went into the European Union via Luxembourg just for making an investment there. Now, you would think that this is an issue that concerns only minor countries, but more relevant actors in the European Union also offer residence in exchange for relevant investment. And some of those countries, most notably, are the UK and Luxembourg, which in exchange for an investment that may range from 13,000 euro to about 5 million euro, will issue you residence. Again, the problem with this is that people have access to the European market, have access to all the rights that European citizens may have, including their financial markets, in exchange for only money. In the worst case scenario, this might be construed as the selling of residence and the selling of citizenship. Why is this relevant? Well, because again, it might be abused for corrupt purposes, and one would hope that governments would enforce higher standards. Now let's move on to our typology section. As we explain every time, a typology is a model or an example of a specific phenomenon, and in our case, it might help to think of it as the trick to learning how to perform corrupt acts, or the actual concrete steps that one would take to perform a corrupt act. Today's typology concerns kickbacks. Kickbacks, sometimes also called tithes, are a concept that was born in the Catholic Church. It used to be that the Catholic Church would demand from its members 10% of their income to sustain church activities. Now, this was perverted in a way, and it was taken to the world of corruption, or to the realm of corruption, where a government official would request 10% of the value of a project or of a contract in exchange for assigning that contract to a specific vendor. Now, this is a problem. This is a perversion of discounts and rebates. Discounts and rebates are fairly common practice, and they are not considered corruption as long as they are given clearly, with clearly defined criteria and publicly, or done in public. But when they are done arbitrarily and only for the private gain of some, they are considered corruption. The big problem with this is that the public official that is supposed to do her job for the benefit of society or for the benefit of everyone is doing so, or is doing it for her own benefit, and is only choosing based on the criteria of who is the highest bidder. How could we avoid it? Well, kickbacks are relatively easily avoided by implementing compliance programs or compliance systems within organizations, both government and private companies. And the only thing that we need to do, or some of the steps that we could take to fight it, is to periodically move people in purchasing positions to other positions. It might be the same job description, but they might do it elsewhere. And that way they have less time to get familiarized with processes and to abuse them. Another way is to actually reinforce and reevaluate our purchasing processes or our procurement processes. The most effective way to do that is to establish clear criteria that people have to document and follow. And obviously, it's always a good idea to avoid having purchase officials meet with potential vendors in private. Have them document every interaction and possibly record it. Okay, so we are done for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we ask that you keep your eyes peeled for our next episodes, or if you want to just make your life easier, just subscribe. If you have any doubts, if you have any possible cases or any topics that you would like to hear us discuss, find us on social media. We would love to hear from you. We would love to read you. And if you have an interesting thought or an interesting idea, we would be glad to discuss it. Now, this is very important. As always, I'd like to remind you that corruption has to be reported. It has to be denounced, but only if you feel absolutely safe. If you feel any type of danger, don't do it. If you are uncertain as whether or not something is corruption or whether or not you are safe and you need help, please feel free to contact us at info@streiner.mx. That's info@streiner.mx, and we would be glad to help you in any way we can. Again, my name is Michel Levien. This thing that we're doing is called The Wife of Caesar, and I love being with you. Thank you.